Great. Okay, so thank you all for joining us today for the Babel Cleanse. We see this session as an opportunity for you to get to grips with the fundamentals of SEO. Learn more about how we can support you in getting a successful SEO and comms strategy off the ground, and how a healthy SEO plan can support and complement your brand awareness and broader communication goals. Much like our holistic approach to client work, where we look at business goals alongside what makes people tick, planning for the year ahead is both about setting down a comms plan, but also equipping ourselves and our people for the challenges ahead. Because let's be honest, brand success is built on much more than our great communication strategies. Healthy businesses are driven by healthy teams of business mindset, with a big help from a cracking SEO and comms plan, of course. With that in mind, we'll be complementing today's session with some helpful tips from Bella Clark, a pranic therapist and an expert on creating and maintaining energy levels to help drive you and your teams towards achieving your business goals. As digital news and platforms such as LinkedIn are fueling a lot of our content intake, combined with expanding responsibilities for comms directors, SEO is a key part of any integrated comms brief. Amidst the jargon of backlinks, content amplification, intelligent crosslinks, and leveraging SEO, it can really, if you leverage it right, it can really help propel campaigns and your products and services as a result. As you will hear in today's session, the approach requires various. The approach that you need to apply varies massively depending on the activity that you need to take part in, whether it's a website rebrand or positioning messaging that to make sure it includes keywords, through to increasing website traffic. The key part is kicking off a deep analysis to better understand the challenge and opportunity to align SEO with your comms outreach. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Rowan, our Babel SEO PR techspert. So please do jump in on the chat with questions as we go, and we can tackle these after his session.
Hi, everybody. So I think we're going to go through some predictions for 2024. But before I get started, I really wanted to sort of hear what maybe people's summary of SEO are, maybe 3 to 5 words. What do you think when you think about SEO? Is it dread? Is it sort of confusion? It'd be good just sort of 3 to 5 words, what people think when they think of SEO. Maybe just pop them in the chat and we can read through some of them. Okay. A roller coaster ride. Okay, I like that. Ups and downs, confusion, a mystery, dark art. Okay. Maybe a couple more if they come in. Okay, so I think confusion, dark art, bit of a mystery. I think that's sort of a common theme that I've come across. Complex, an opportunity for people to rip you off. Okay, harsh, but fair enough. I understand. I guess for 2024, there's a lot of things that I reckon in the industry from like an SEO perspective are mostly going to stay the same. And I think there's also some things that are potentially going to change, and they're sort of predictions. A lot of people have got predictions, so some of them have got to be wrong. Some of them have got to be right. Hopefully these are going to be pretty good. This first slide that we're looking at now, the technical SEO, these are sort of 3 things that I think should stay mostly the same going into 2024 as we sort of kick off now. So the first one then is that search engines will still need to discover content. So a lot of the technical SEO to make it easy for search engines to discover and analyze content, a lot of that's going to stay the same throughout the year. Things such as site migrations, redesigns, digital transformations, any sort of major work on the website that's going to sort of lead to significant changes in how search engines perceive your website, perceive your content. I think those are still going to continue to sort of pose risk. And I think SEO still plays a really important part in risk management and avoiding sort of big drops of performance when you're sort of launching these big technical changes. So I think that's not going to change. And then I also think sort of finally site structure and internal linking, the way the web has sort of been interconnected, I think that's going to largely remain important. I don't think those are going to change. So really the technical foundations for SEO, I suspect going into 2024 are largely going to be unchanged. The next slide then is content SEO. If we could, yep. I think within content SEO, certain things may very well change, but some things I think should stay largely the same. So the first point is user-focused content, which is designed to be readable and helpful. I think that's going to continue to be the North Star. That's obviously the way that Google articulates it. But in terms of how you should sort of think about SEO, think about content, it should really continue to be user-focused, finding out what do users really want, what medium do they want to receive that content, and then ultimately trying to come up with a great strategy to deliver that content for them. So I think that sort of North Star is largely going to remain the same. Things like page titles, headings, meta descriptions, all of the little rabbit holes you can go down, I think they're still going to continue to be helpful, particularly for displaying search results. But I think, yeah, when it comes to content SEO, that shouldn't change too much. And the third point I put here, not everybody's going to be familiar with it, but sort of George Orwell, he wrote what are called 6 rules for writing with clarity. And I'd encourage people to maybe go away and read that if they haven't looked at it before. But really, the idea behind these 6 rules was to sort of write copy that isn't too long, it's not repetitive or overcomplicated. You cut out words when you don't need them, you try to avoid jargon, and keep it simple. And I think that kind of content written like that is going to continue to resonate with people. And so I'd expect that to stay largely unchanged when it comes to writing content for an SEO. There's a question there, and we'll come back to those at the end. In terms of strategy, I think really in SEO, there's one major strategy, and that is maintaining a sort of one-to-one ratio between keywords and landing pages. And it doesn't mean that every single variation of a keyword needs to have its own landing page, you know, misspellings, whether it's plural or singular. It's really like a sort of one-to-one between ideas. And that's, I think, largely going to remain the same. There still needs to be a place where search engines can send users to. And I think you still need to have that sort of overarching strategy to have at least one landing page to cover each sort of keyword group that you're going after. In terms of how you think about SEO, it's been quite some time now where search engines are pulling in lots of different data sources and thinking about SEO holistically. And I think that's going to continue to be a trend. It might even increase. It might even become more important. And then finally, then stretching the value of creative assets. In terms of like a strategy setting point, if you're creating content for SEO, if you're creating it for social media, trying to find ways to sort of leverage that content is going to continue to be an important strategy as a business. So those are sort of largely things that are going to stay the same. But things that I think are likely to change in 2024 there's sort of 3 predictions on the next slide, please. So the 3 big predictions are Google Search Generative Experience, or Google SGE for short. That is likely to roll out into other markets this year. It's currently live in the United States, so some people will obviously have access to that. But in terms of that going live to other markets, I'd expect that to happen. In terms of the marketing funnel, I think there's going to be a bit of a shift, and we'll talk about this in a bit in just a minute. But in terms of the marketing funnel, I think it's going to potentially change how we view SEO as Search Generative Experience goes live. And then lastly, I think that's also going to have an impact on how do we actually measure success in SEO. So the next few slides are really just going to flesh that out a little bit. So if you've not come across Google SGE, Search Generative Experience, this is sort of a new thing where Bing and Google are sort of experimenting. And at the top of your search results, you start to see this little button that says Generate Result. And what happens is it then goes away and it sort of populates lots of content and it fills the browser with content. There tends to be citations and sources, so you can kind of go to those places they got the information from. But it's essentially a new way of experiencing search. It's a new way of interacting with search results. So I'd really encourage, if you've not looked at that, that's something that's really going to be quite important. It's already live in the United States, but that will start to roll out, I think, this year into other markets. The next couple of slides are going to be a bit of a demonstration of that. So on the screen here, we have me searching for a best hand blender. There's a couple of paid results, and then here you see this big blue section where it's got loads of individual hand blenders, and there's sort of drop-down menus there. But really what you're seeing is all of that content is completely generated. And then obviously right down here at the bottom where you've got foodandwine.com, this is where we start off with those 10 blue links that we sort of typically associate with SEO. And so I think how we view search is going to change, because the landscape is going to change a little bit. And so as the layout changes, I think we need to be aware that that's going to impact stuff like paid search. It's going to be impacting SEO. And I think the sort of fallout from that is what we're going to see in the next 2 points as well. The next slide is a bit of a caveat. Not all content is going to be easy to generate and refine. I think this video isn't playing for me. Might just need to press play on it. There you go. So in SEO, there's certain content called YMYL content, and we call that your money, your life. And really, this is types of content where you're asking questions, say, about credit cards. And so I'm typing in, help me choose a credit card, and it's going to come back with some results. It doesn't actually generate any unique content. It just shows me the 10 blue links that you typically expect. And so I think there are going to be certain queries where search engines just don't want to get involved. So that's kind of the caveat. So even though Google Search Generative Experience is going to start rolling out, there are going to be areas where it's largely unaffected, because the actual, generative AI just doesn't want to touch those topics. It doesn't want to get sued for harming somebody's health, harming somebody's life. So the second point, the second prediction, marketing funnel. I think as the layout starts to change and as search engines start to fill in this sort of informational content that is really, really good at generating, that's going to sort of start competing with SEO. And so whereas we've sort of seen traffic for these informational queries go down as rich snippets and featured results come in, I think we're going to expect to see that trend continue. And what I think that's doing is pushing SEO further and further down the marketing funnel. It becomes a little bit more focused on demand conversion rather than demand generation. And it's going to start trying to capture some of that, those queries where AI isn't quite as good as humans, or just simply won't make those decisions for you because it has a risk for your money or your life. So I think the impact of Google SGE is going to be more competition at the top level of the funnel. And I think that's going to push SEO strategies further down the funnel to focus on conversion more so than on sort of broader informational demand generation. I think the next slide is a good example of this. And so there's this video, I think we might have to press play. What is SEO? And you can see it generates this instant result, and you've got all this different information. There's an ability to dialogue with it. So I ask how to use SEO for beginners, and it then comes back with sort of these step-by-step instructions, and there's these citations that you can go away and find. And so clearly this is a very compelling way to interact with search. And for really easy to answer sort of informational queries, I think that's where we're going to see really high levels of competition. Informational search makes up around about 70 to 80% of searches at the moment. And so where there's already lots of competition, we're going to see even more competition. I think there's going to be a bit of a fight over that. I don't think people are going to sort of just give up on SEO. I think there is going to be some sort of lawsuits coming in to say, we don't want you using our sources, we don't want you using our information, because people are going to stop seeing traffic come to their website for these queries. I expect stuff like editors and news websites, they might be more affected if they're not getting people click through to their website as much. because of ad revenue. So I think there are going to be businesses that are going to sort of be hard done by with this, and that we'd expect to see some sort of lawsuits following, which will make it harder for search engines to sort of roll this out universally. The final point then is measuring success. And I think the sort of consequence of everything we've just looked at, so sort of SEO moving further down the funnel, you're going to be more sort of generated experiences. I think how we track and measure success will have to change with it as well. It's no longer sort of 10 blue links at the top of the search results. You've got this sort of huge amount of interactive content that's above those 10 blue links. So sort of what we traditionally think of as keyword ranking might start to become an outdated concept when we start dealing with generative experiences. And so how do you sort of track that? Well, if the tools allow you to, that'll be great. If they don't, then how we measure success may have to change along with it as well. So they're all sort of tied to that Google SGE. I think this is the big development within SEO this year and what we can expect to see in 2024. And then the follow-up is obviously potentially moving further down the marketing funnel to more conversion focused, and how we measure success is likely to change with it. I think that's it for my slides now. I might be wrong.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the whistle-stop tour. What makes for a healthy SEO strategy in 2024? No doubt they'll have got that. That's all. Have got the proverbial cogs turning for everyone, and hopefully some questions coming through on the chat there for you to have a look at in a second. We're thrilled to be able to announce this as a new service offering within Babel. So really brilliant PR is based on a number of key work streams, collaborating and working together to deliver the most impactful results for the clients that we work with. So if you're interested in understanding how well your organization's SEO is performing, we'll be offering a one-off free SEO analysis for all attendees today. So please do get in touch with us after the session to set that up. So Rowan, if we just dive into some of the questions, and please do add any more that have come to mind after kind of swilling around everything that Rowan's just run through. If you want to jump in, Rowan, on any in particular.
Yeah, there was a really good comment around SEO focusing on the bottom of the funnel means long tail keywords, lower search volumes, but still higher return on investment, maybe. I'm going to assume there's a question mark at the maybe there. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. These sort of big search volume keywords, sort of informational, 70 to 80% of all sort of search queries, those I think are going to be the easier to answer questions. So generative AI and search generative experiences, they're going to be better at answering that. And so I think it's just going to be flooded full of competition, so many people able to give a good answer, that going after sort of harder to answer queries, sort of lower search volume, but more conversion focus, I think that's where SEO is likely to go. And I think it's going to offer a very good return on investment if you go that way, rather than the sort of really high competition content. It might be quite cheap because of generative AI, might be quite cheap to sort of produce that content, but to rank for that content, I think it's going to be quite difficult given just the sheer amount of websites going for it. So I think that's a really good observation. I think there's another question here. How prepared are businesses in your experiences for the changes ahead? I don't think everyone's aware of search generative experience yet. It's obviously only in the United States, so not everybody's sort of heard about this. I haven't really seen much talk around how people are going to track this differently yet. So I think people, it's going to sort of come out of nowhere, and I think blindside a few people. But I do think that people, you know, certain businesses are making some preparations for generative AI. I think largely focused on sort of content production and how do you sort of create new assets. I think less focus has been applied to how is it going to affect the sort of search layout. Another question just came in. How long does a typical deep...
Can I jump in on the SG? So what do you think is the biggest opportunity for businesses for embracing SG and actually, like you say, preparing for and putting it into place? So first of all, awareness, obviously we've spoken about that, but what's the opportunity for them?
Yeah, I mean, Google's obviously going to be using this to answer queries. And so how you measure success in SEO is going to be largely determined by, do you get cited? And so I think the preparation is to work on and analyze, how do you get cited? How do you provide a resource that Google's going to want to link towards and say, this is a great resource to find out more about X, Y, or Z? So I think that's sort of how you prepare and do it. Largely, as I said, the sort of technical and the content things underpinning it aren't going to be too dramatically different. You sort of still want to make sure your content can be discovered. And so obviously that's going to be quite important. I think they have a new user agent as well for sort of generative experiences, and so making sure that that's enabled and that they can come and see your website. That's obviously going to be quite important. If you block that, then you probably won't show up. So I think there's things like that where it's just sort of basic technical checks that you probably need to do and make sure. By default, it's probably already open, but if you've made changes to sort of hide yourself from generative experiences, then obviously you might need to reconsider as this search generative experience starts to take off and how it might affect your traffic. In terms of content,
one more question from the chat, sure. if you've got time, Rowan.
Yeah, I was going to say, from a content perspective, I think just making things to the point. As I sort of said, keep it to the point, be short, succinct. Where you have headings, be helpful. I think that's going to be easier to digest for search engines. It's always been very helpful for users. So yeah, keep having that as your North Star, and I think it's the right strategy. One last question then: how long does a typical deep dive SEO analysis take, and what information is shared? In terms of a deep dive analysis, we can obviously tailor that to if you're doing one section of the website or if you're just doing the whole website. So it can really range in terms of time, and the sort of findings tend to be actionable. Like, what can you give to developers? What can you pass on to your content writers specifically so that they can optimize specific pages or maybe create new pages? So the deep dive analysis, you're normally expecting the standard PDF, slides, sort of, explanation of all the findings. And yeah, I think there's a follow-up question there that might be quite quick to answer, if you permit me one more. Can you provide examples of new metrics that we need to implement to measure success? I think reach has been a good metric that people have sort of slept on for a little while in SEO. So I think the concept comes from sort of social media, where it's, how many visitors or how many eyes did you get yourself in front of? And I think there is ways to do that within SEO. So if you're in position 1 and 2, maybe you have like 100% reach, 100% of people searching that query are going to see you. And then maybe as you sort of go further down the positions, you have sort of less reach, so to speak. It's not quite the same as sort of forecasting and saying, we expect this much traffic, but it's kind of quite helpful as a concept. So reach might be quite good. And then certainly, obviously, traffic coming to your website might become more important. I mean, it's already very important, but it might be a very clear way of measuring success. So I think those are 2 good examples.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you found it useful and cleansing experience, particularly watching the Babel team demonstrate some of the exercises there. As tech PR experts, if you're interested in finding out how we can support or improve your existing SEO strategy as part of an integrated comms program, do get in touch to claim your free SEO analysis and find out more about Babel. While on the subject of freebies, you should have received an email with a link to claim your Babel Cleanse goodie bag. There are heaps of great bits inside to set you up for the year ahead, so make sure you claim them and they'll be distributed over the next week and a half. On that note, we wish you all a very happy, healthy and prosperous start to the year. Goodbye and thank you for joining.
Thank you.